Shalom, welcome to Eretz Israel. It's Erev Shabbat. The sun is going down and it's getting quieter and quieter. And that's itself is the beginning of Shabbat, when we can become quiet within ourselves, quiet in our home life, quiet in the mind that is constantly working about what we're going to do tomorrow and what we did yesterday, and to be in the now. Why is it so hard to be in the now? Well, that's a big question, actually. But the answer is actually very simple. It's hard to be in the now because of fear. Fear of what will be, fear of what was. But if I can just erase the fear, I'm not in denial about fears that I have. Everyone has fears that come from generations of fear that comes from the Holocaust, fear that comes from, your childhood. But if I could just turn off the fear, turn down the volume of fear for a day, what kind of day is that going to be? It's going to be a day like Shabbat. Now here in Sefer HaMiddot, a book that Rebbe Nachman wrote when he was purportedly 7 years old. It's hard to believe that a 7-year-old could write this. But when we understand that the soul is above age, your soul, my soul, there's no such age to a soul. There's only the measurement of the time that the soul's in a body, any particular body. But the minute you take a soul out of a body, it doesn't have age, because it's from the ageless. And when you're from the ageless, you don't get caught in time. You get stuck in the fear of the future, the fear of the past. And I can just be now in Shabbat. So Rabbi Nachman says is that when you keep Shabbat, you draw upon yourself the light of Mashiach. So I always ask myself when I read Torah, I'd like to question, what is he really telling me, the light of Mashiach? And what is Shmirat Shabbat? Okay, you keep the laws. Well, how does that bring about light of Mashiach? And what is the light of Mashiach? So we know that the light of Mashiach was born in the beginning of creation. And the spirit of Mashiach, the idea of a redemption, the idea of a redeemer, the idea of being redeemed. But even that doesn't really fill in the question. You get the questionnaire back. You didn't finish the answer. I heard that a few times, But we understand that the idea of redemption is freeing something from bondage. The person from their fear is a freedom from bondage. The person from their lack is a freedom from bondage. A person from their conception of life is also a type of redemption. So we could go closer and tighter into our definition and say that the light of the Mashiach is the light of that getting free from whatever is binding me. And Shabbat, which is full of laws that you have to keep Shabbat, it seems counterintuitive. Wait a minute, I'm keeping this day with all these laws so that I could be free from the physical world, free from the life I've lived, whether good or bad, or somewhere in between, which most of us live in between the extremes. Freedom from that, freedom from my parents, freedom from my kids, freedom from... What are we after here? Well, freedom is actually very interesting. Rabbi Nachman says freedom is the ability to choose. But then you say, well, okay, how do I choose? Well, the freedom is the ability to choose a godly perspective. So how do I do that? Well, I have to look how does God reveal his perspective? It's in tens of thousands of pages of Torah literature. So that seems like a big load to carry into your brain, right? Now I have learned 100,000 pages of Torah, and so I can tell you what God's perspective is. Well, hopefully, Da Hashem Elokecha, right? Know God, your God. Know Him. Know how He operates in the world. That's a command that we're given. But still, I get free by knowing what He wants me to do. Well, wait a minute. That doesn't sound like freedom. It means I'm back to being a servant. I'm back to being a good boy. I'm back to being the son of the king. I'm back to being a good servant, and all those things. So this Mashiach idea of being freed, it seems like the Torah is putting me back in a kind of a spiritual bondage. But it's not true. And that's one of the misperceptions and misrepresentations of Judaism throughout history, if not the biggest. The biggest fake news is that being religious ties you down. No. Being religious ties down our evil inclination. And then suddenly we discover we have two inclinations. We have a good one. And it's not the same as the bad one. They're two different guys, in the cockpit. And one is trying to always take the other guy's chair. It's like the co-pilot's always trying to take the pilot's chair. And he's this big, old, powerful, professional wrestler trying to take the chair from the new little guy that just came out of pilot school. That's the evil inclination, trying to take the pilot of your life away from you. But when you discover that you have that good, new, fresh, beautiful, innocent, pure ability to choose goodness, then you have a tool, a lifetime tool against the evil inclination. Now, the Mashiach idea in Shabbat, I ask myself another question. What's it going to be like when Mashiach comes? What's going to be with Shabbat then? I mean, there's a lot of opinions. But the simplest opinion, the greatest rabbis tell us, Rebbe Nachman included, that there's not going to be an evil inclination. What does that look like? It means that we won't be excited by negativity. We won't be thrilled by someone else's misfortune. We won't be engaged in danger. We won't be titillated by celebrity. We won't be distracted by foolishness. We won't be excited to hear gossip. We will actually live in goodness, and we'll seek more goodness. And everybody else will be doing it too. And suddenly, social media will go, well, it'll change. It'll become a place where people talk about goodness. And you won't get news reports about this shooting and this explosion and this kidnapping and this divorce case. And evil will simply disappear and good will get to be itself. And that will be the redemption of humanity. It's too simple for people to accept, right? I know. We need big fireworks. We need Mashiach and some kind of like hovercraft, right? That's zipping around Jerusalem. Well, I'm not saying he won't have one of those, but, we'll worry about the Jetson model, Mashiach model, the Rolls Royce of personal flying vehicles. That seems like a terrifying idea if you think about everybody having their own flying vehicle. Then what's going to happen? There's no paint on the highways in the sky. There's no right and left turn signs. There's no traffic signals. What's the speed limit in space? Okay, enough science fiction fantasy, but it doesn't seem like it's so far away anymore. The point is, all that fantasy that we engage our imagination in about messianic times, it needs to be demystified. We demystify the mystical, and we see that it's very real and very practical and very down to earth. The Mashiach, the Shabbat of Mashiach, the Mashiach that has a Shabbat, it's going to be Shabbat without evil, without the negativity digging in on all sides, and we're going to have that freedom, that redemption from the lower self. And we get to be our higher self on a regular basis. And each person will receive the expanded self that they built here in the world of constriction. Remember that. Each person receives what he builds. And the building chiefly is through our self-sacrifice. Now, there are many ways to self-sacrifice. To listen to somebody when you don't want to listen, that's self-sacrifice. To give charity is self-sacrifice. To wait in line for somebody else is self-sacrifice. Not including, of course, raising a family and holding down a job and doing all the other things that we do for others. It's all self-sacrifice. But until I connect it to God's will, it doesn't make it into the same bank account. Because when we connect it to God's will, we draw His will into our will, and they become one will. So there are good people all over this planet who don't know God and don't know Torah and but they do good deeds. Do they lose those good deeds? No. Do those good deeds contribute to their world to come? Yes. Don't let anybody ever tell you that only Jews get the world to come. That's false. They might get a different, condo, depends on your address in the world to come. But the difference, the quantitative and exponential difference, is when you connect your mind to what you do. That this Shabbat, I'm resting not because I'm tired and I want to go take a nap. I'm resting because God said rest. I'm resting, I'm making a meal because God said eat, bless, dance, sing, learn, pray, meditate. When our will becomes one will, we draw that will here. And that accelerates this freedom process. So accelerate this freedom process with your mind. Constantly, continually connecting. 3 C's, right? Constantly, continually connecting our everyday life with the big picture. And that is a messianic vision that we can live with. That's, not based on some fantastic revelation that we don't really know. So I want to bless all of us to taste a little bit of the world to come on Shabbat. That time when there's only good. That's all it is. Just erase all the bad from your mind for 24 hours, and you will be in the Shabbat of Mashiach. Erase all the negativity, the stuff you've done, the stuff others have done to you. Erase it for a day. That will become a Shabbat of the world to come. The sun is going down. I can see it through the curtains. It's hard to leave you all because we give each other meaning. We give each other purpose. And that relationship is the repair of the world. If you study Kabbalah, you know that the world's broke because they didn't share. Nations break because they don't share. Families break because they don't share. People break up inside because they don't share with themselves. So here we are sharing on Facebook, on YouTube, on whatever platforms that I sneak my way onto. It's about that sharing. Sharing opens us, frees us, and we have a chance to taste that big light of Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you next week All the best.